Welcome to the YPG Hub. I'm with Adobe. My name's John Lewington, and I'll be the MC for this afternoon. We are ecstatic to be able to sponsor this. We believe in changing the world through digital experiences, so this hub is a great fit for Adobe. Just a few housekeeping rules. I'll be introducing the panelists here shortly. If you'd like to use social media, there's at USGIF and at GEOINT Symposium and hashtag GEOINT21. If you guys have questions, feel free to raise your hand. People will be coming around with cards, and then we'll submit those to the panelists at the end. And then also, we really don't have breaks in between sessions today, so it's going to kind of be rolling. We have one at 1 o'clock, one at 2 o'clock, and one at 3 o'clock, and then we conclude at 4. So if you do need to get up and take a break, just please do so discreetly. Well, with that, I am thrilled to have this panel. We really have a special treat for you today. Our moderator is Honorable Ellen McCarthy, who's the former Assistant Secretary of State for Intelligence and Research. We have Letitia Long, who's the chair of the INSA Board of Directors. Kevin Miners, who's the former Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Enterprise Capacity. And then Tony Frazier, who's the EVP of Global Field Operations. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you, John. Sit down here. It's hard getting up in these chairs.
It is.
So, welcome everybody. It's so good to see you, and thank you for coming at lunchtime today to listen to us talk. I'll tell you, great advice is worth its weight in gold. And I'll tell you that we have the gold standard of panelists here today. So I will tell you that I have so much over my career benefited from their mentorship, their friendship, their being incredible role models. I have, from each one of these folks, I've taken that, and I know that you're going to have the same experience today. But before we start, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. And as you introduce yourselves, you've got 2 minutes, but please include the best advice and the worst advice you've ever gotten while you're doing your intro. So with that, Tony, let's start with you.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Frazier. I'm the Executive Vice President of Global Field Operations at Maxar Technologies, and I made a mid-career pivot into this industry. So I started my career in strategy consulting at working for Bain & Company, and then after that, spent about 10, 15 years in enterprise technology, focused on the commercial sector, and in 2010 made a foray into this industry, first with GEOI, and then GEOI became part of Digital Globe, and now we're part of Maxar. And so for me, one of the things I wanted to highlight in terms of areas of advice is don't be afraid to take risks. Being one where put yourself, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because when I started in this industry, I had no knowledge of the national security mission, a little background in geospatial, but I had a lot of confidence in the skills I'd built over the years in building new products and bringing innovation into the commercial sector, but learning to bring it into this market. And so that would be the main advice. One of the things I would say the worst advice I received was when I started in university. I was went to University of Pennsylvania, was studying engineering, playing football, and one of the guidance counselors, told me that, to not be too ambitious, to focus on an or. So it's like, well, you can either play football or you can get good grades. You can't do the combination. And I made the honor roll and started my football team, and have been trying to prove people wrong ever since. So thanks for the opportunity.
Kevin Miners, grew up in the Navy. I worked first at Spa War, doing black boxes, building black boxes, and then NavAir, Naval Air Systems Command, building planes. And then I got into UAVs and satellites and all things spy stuff. It was just great. I was a procurement guy. I was a program manager. I bought stuff. So one of my mentors that might be on the stage today, she and my boss, Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, came up to me and they said, hey, we really like to stretch your rubber band. And I was pretty, well, that was white, but it was an opportunity where my mentors wanted to stretch my boundaries. I didn't know money, I didn't understand money, and they gave me an opportunity to go be, a green eye shade person and understand how resourcing works. And I'll never forget, I looked at them and I go, I like what I'm doing. I don't want to take that. I don't want that job. And they said, think about it. Well, it's kind of hard to say no to her. And so I walked into that position. I didn't do really good at the beginning. But I got to tell you, in terms of advice, I wouldn't be where I am today because learning about how money works, where the resources flows, where a program manager can influence the resourcing process, made me a 10 times better program manager when I got back. So I guess my question to all of you is, really the lesson in this one is, how many of you folks have a great mentor? I need to see more hands, I gotta tell you. And don't think you just need one mentor, get multiple mentors. And the other piece of this advice is, when the mentor gives you something, sometimes you just have to say yes, even though you don't think it's the best advice, because it really is the best advice. Number two, I would tell you the worst advice I had was I got into ICAF War College. It's a natural progression that you go to senior service school. And the general officer that had recommended me was very proud that all of his people that he had recommended had all become distinguished graduates, which means you got to write a lot of papers, you got to do a lot of research, you got to do all the reading that they advertise. And I didn't want to let him down. He's like, you are going to be a distinguished graduate. And I was like, yes, sir. I'll give it my best shot. Well, guess what? I went to the library, studied. Now, Tish is laughing because I didn't really graduate with a great grade point from Virginia Tech, so it's hard to believe, but I did. I went to the library. I was like trying to do all the reading. I'm an engineer, so I'm not a really good writer, so I wasn't really getting top 5% on papers. And it was lucky that there was a Navy commander sitting next to me who became one of my great friends, smacked me literally upside the head and said, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. And he said, this is all about networking. It's all about, these are all the people at ICAF and War College are the next 1, 2-star, 3 stars. This is your opportunity to meet them so that when you take your next job, you're going to see them throughout the rest of your career. And there I was, it was like an epiphany of, oh my God, I should be going like on the weekend trips to, CENTCOM or, Southcom, Canada. I should be playing softball and basketball and all the intramural sports to meet all these people. And luckily, it's a year-long program, so I made up for it in spades. But it wasn't bad advice to try and excel at ICAF. But I got to tell you, I took it too much to the extreme, and I really missed what it was that ICAF was all about, which was networking. And so that's another piece of advice I would give you is like here today in this week. It's all about networking. It's about meeting people. It's about learning. So don't think you have to just, I'm going to bury in on this one. Spread out, meet as many people as you can, get as many business cards as you can, because networking really does help you in your career.
Kevin, it's only a lot of reading if you actually do it. So Tish Long, Chairman of the Board of INSA, the Intelligence and National Security Alliance, longtime member of the intelligence community. Delighted to be here and delighted to see everyone. Good afternoon. Piece of advice, never take a job you are completely ready for. If you do, you're going to be bored. And therefore, you're not going to do the best job. And that is a piece, I think, probably the best advice I got early in my career. Like Kevin, I grew up in the Navy. I was working at a Navy research lab. Yes, Doug, the best of us did. Ellen, Naval Intelligence. And I knew I was ready to do something different. I just didn't know what. And I got a phone call to go to a job downtown at NAVC, Naval Sea Systems Command. And it was very similar to what I was doing already. But it was a promotion. And back then, getting promoted to GS-13 when you're in the Navy lab system was really hard. So I'm talking to one of my mentors, and he says, Tish, great opportunity, but I think it'll be a waste for you. Number one, it's not a stretch. You could do that job in your sleep. And number two, it's not going to prepare you for the next. So it's not only thinking about what you're doing now and how it's going to prepare you for your next job or journey along the path, but how's it going to set you up for the future? So be thinking a little more long term. And by the way, for those of you who have 30-year plans, wow. I never had one. I never had a 5-year plan. But be ready for something that comes out of left field, because that's what happened to me next. So I didn't take that job. And what did come along about a year later really set me on the trajectory that included just some phenomenal opportunities, because it was the opportunity to go to naval intelligence, and that's where I started in the intelligence community. Worst advice I ever received, Tony, very similar to yours. Day -1 of my university life, Virginia Tech, go Hokies. I say day -1, classes were starting the next day. I'm sitting down with my advisor, and we're talking, and he leans over, and he says, now, dear, you don't really want to be an engineer, do you? I mean, that's not what women do. He then proceeded to tell me about the great home ec department at Virginia Tech, and it really was an amazing department then. It doesn't exist anymore. I looked at him, and I got up and left. And I never went back to see him again. I actually saw him. We were on the quarter system then. I actually saw him third quarter. I had him as a professor. You better believe I got an A in his class. I found my own mentors. I found my own advisors. So I didn't take the advice.
Thank you all. And so just to introduce myself, my name is Ellen McCarthy. I started in naval intelligence many, many years ago.
Just a few years.
But I will tell you that I think I had ADD, because I started as an all-source analyst, went down and worked at the sink lamp fleet level, Steve Boraz, came back to Coast Guard, helped Coast Guard set up an intel program, left Coast Guard, went to USDI, because there's this thing called a USDI being stood up to work for, well, these two, and left USDI to run a nonprofit similar to USGIF, came back to work at NGA, to work for her again, left NGA to go run a company, work in the private sector, came back to then work at State Department, which I will tell you ran INR, Lee Schwartz. My favorite job ever. Of the 30 plus years, I loved my time at INR. Actually, I loved all my jobs. My point here, though, is that every one of those opportunities came because someone called me up, a mentor called me up and said, have you thought about this? And so, you know, this is where the role of mentors is just so incredibly important. In every capacity, it was somebody who called me and said, I think it's time you think about this. The best advice I ever got, I'm going to attribute it to actually a guy named Admiral Tom Wilson, whose advice was work hard, play hard, sleep smart. Now, he told me sleep less, but he's edited it over the last few years to say sleep smart. And I'll tell you, I have followed that advice to the T. The worst advice I ever got, I won't attribute it, which was, you're too nice. You're too nice for this job. I remember thinking, who's too nice? I later went back to that person and I responded to their advice in a not very nice manner. I won't tell you the words that I used, but my point was that I think that empathy is an incredibly important leadership trait, and so if that is being too nice, then fine, I'm too nice. Okay, so that's me. So we're now going to jump into questions, and because I get to moderate, I get to ask the first questions. But I hope you all are thinking of also lots of questions. As I mentioned, this is the gold standard. So please think of ask them anything. Trust me, they were going to give you their best. There, for the extroverts in the group, I know there's microphones here, the YPG Hub folks from USGIF, or there's cards for the introverts. So raise your hand, they'll run a card over to you, but please ask lots of questions. So I'm going to start. I'm going to start with you, Tony.
Okay.
So what is the current state of the market in the geospatial field? You are at Maxar, highly successful. You support the commercial sector, the government sector. You have incredible visibility into what's going on. So what is the state of the job market? What do you think is going on?
Well, I mean, I just think there's tremendous opportunity. I know on my team alone, we have over 100 open positions. So wide variety of skills from geospatial analysts and data scientists and software developers and DevOps engineers. And I think the pace of innovation that you're hearing about here at the conference, there's multiple ways for you to contribute to that. And so when I think about the career opportunities, the common denominator is curiosity. If we have talent that aspires to do more and is always trying to learn and extend themselves, then you may start as an all-source analyst. Move to become a geospatial analyst, pick up Python skills, and become a data scientist, and you can create a lot of career mobility in our field. Ultimately, that builds more competence, and then if you also take the advice of what Kevin said and build connections, you can navigate your career and do many things. So again, we're having an insatiable appetite for talent. We're trying to build out kind of presence where people are. That's part of our reason that we're excited to be here in St. Louis. But broadly, there's just a ton of opportunity to grow in our industry.
Great, thanks, Tony. And I would say to our other panelists, if you feel like you need to chime in on a question, please feel free to do that. And if we're not jumping in, I'm going to go to Kevin. So, Kevin, how do you stand out in this competitive job market, or whether you're looking for a job or you're looking for a promotion? Sort of, what are those qualities that you need to be thinking about to sort of stand out?
So I'm going to give you two things. First one is diversification, and I'll get to that in a second. And then second is sort of your presence, your communication style. So let's start with diversification, and I'll use an NGA an example. If I'm posting a position to be, for a GS 13, 14, 15, and someone comes in and they apply and they've got 5 years experience or 6 years experience in source, and the second application comes in and says, I got 5 years in analysis. But I have another resume that comes in and says, hey, I got a couple years in source and a couple years in analysis. I really resonate with that, because what you're looking for is somebody that has that sort of different perspective. They understand the source person and what they're going through. They understand from an analysis perspective what it is they're going through. And again, going back to the example I used with Tish, where she asked me to go work in the money field, I think I got promoted because people would look at me and they go, Kevin understands it from the program man expert as well as the resource side. So again, diversification. And I'm not saying do 1 year in source and do 1 year analysis, because that doesn't look good either. When you look at a resume and you see somebody just hopping around, it kind of makes you wonder, are they not happy, or what's going on there? But being able to have, having source, analysis, resources, oh my God, it's marketing. Everybody's going to go, that person is well-rounded. They can see things from different perspectives. And that's what we're looking for as you move up. You want to be, it's okay to wear your source hat to say, I want this because source guys need, or analysis, our folks need this. But it's better to be able to say, I understand the different perspectives from everybody. The second thing in terms of communication, I have watched over my years, especially in OSD, where you're sitting there with the vice chairman and the deputy secretary. It might be the best idea ever invented in the world, but if you can't communicate succinctly to the number two person, on either side of the military and the civilian, and explain what it is, that why you need $1 billion or $100 million, or even like wherever you're at, $10 million, they lose. They're out the door. So again, I know in our Navy days, we had this thing called Toastmasters. I was terrible. And so I don't know if they still have Toastmasters, but it was, so I'm giving everybody here a homework assignment. Sign up for Toastmasters. It changed me. I was scared. I was scared to get up in front of folks and try and debate, 1,000 ship Navy or whatever. But going to Toastmasters, it really did help you. They would, your peers are critiquing you. Like you said 100 times, right? Or you did not convey that well in terms of the facts or the figures. And then if you're getting into this as a new market, like my son's a junior at Virginia Tech. Again, that presence, like he wasn't hitting a lot of internships because that Zoom thing was not working out real well for him because it was hard to give that presence. But I would tell you, like I told him, the book I told him to read, Winning Friends and Influencing People. It's an old book, but it's a goodie in terms of being able to have a conversation with someone, very senior in a corporation, just have a question about where'd you go to school, or, you're trying to connect with them. So again, I would tell you, diversification in your resume to be able to show that you have different perspectives, and then that communications presence. I have seen so many people just sink or swim when they can't tell the story. It's all about telling that story and conveying why it's important. I need that resource. Usually it's about resources. But anyway. Hope that helps.
Kevin, that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, Tish. So, we're getting through COVID right now, and people are starting to think about, what's next? What do I want to do? When do you know that it's time for a change? Whether it's a career change, an a change in jobs. When? And I think with COVID, a lot of us are thinking this. So, what advice do you have for people who are thinking about change?
Yes, that's a great question, Ellen, and Tony talked about this a little bit. I mean, he made a total career pivot mid-career, as you said. I'm very similar to Ellen in that I moved around a lot. 6 years with the Navy lab, 6 years with Naval Intelligence, then I went to DIA, and then CIA, and then back to Naval Intelligence, and then OSD, and then back to DIA, and then to the best agency ever, NGA. And I would say that I just kind of knew it was time. So, how did I know? First of all, I'm the type of person, know your strengths. Certainly, work on things you aren't super strong on, but know your strengths and play to them. I like to create new things. And so some of you there in the audience are saying, so why'd you spend so much time in government? Kind of don't create new things. To which I say, sure we do. After 9/11, we completely recreated naval intelligence and how we supported the global war on terrorism and everything that we were doing with gray shipping and tracking, tracking vessels that didn't want to be tracked, and that whole arena. So completely reimagined there. I'll back up a minute. When I was at the community management staff first, we stood up the Office of the Deputy Director for Central Intelligence for Community Management, the predecessor to the DNI's office. Out of whole cloth. 3 of us here on this stage helped establish the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence when nobody in the building wanted the office, when the DNI's predecessor didn't want the office. That was a lot of fun. But so how did I know when it was time? I did what I set out to do. We were establishing something new. Once it got to a point of kind of steady state, I was done. Somebody else is better at operations than I am. So I like that creation part. The other thing, similar to Ellen, I got phone calls. For every single one of those jobs, I didn't apply. I applied for my very first job, and I didn't apply. I raised my hand for the NGA job. And so it was also really relying on my network and my mentors, who would call and say, think about this. And when I would say, oh my gosh, I don't think I could ever do that, then we'd go have a cup of tea and talk about what the pros were, what the cons were, how it would help me not only for the next, but the next after the next. And then I'd also talk to my family. Talk to my husband, talk to the kids. What was this going to mean, for the next opportunity? How much might I be gone? Where were they in their journey? Because, these jobs are all consuming. They're commitments, and they're commitments not only for you, but for your family. And so, obviously, taking that into account, extremely important. So, how do you know? It's different for everyone. What is your passion? Are you following your passion? Are you, really putting into it? Everything you put in is what you get out is reflective of what you put in. So are you following your passion? If you're getting bored, maybe it's time to consider something else. Kevin talked about diversification, always expanding, taking advantage of those opportunities, but expanding your network and expanding kind of who you are and what your skill sets are. So I'm not sure I answered the question, Ellen. Hopefully I gave folks a lot to think about. When it comes down to it, only you can make the decision on what's best for you and what's next for you, and get a lot of input. Talk to as many people as you can. Talk to folks who have a similar career and who have made a similar change. And I guess the final is, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, there's always something else out there. As Tony said, there's a ton of opportunities.
I love that. I take the passion part out of it. If it sounds like fun, give it a shot.
Work hard, play hard.
Work hard, play hard. Okay, so we've got some questions here from the audience. Thank you. So to my esteemed panelists here, so any thoughts around diversification experience? So what's the government versus industry perspective on diversification?
So I'll start, and you can add in. When I was at the community management staff, the predecessor to the DNI's office, we actually developed the Intelligence Community Officer Program, the Joint Duty Program. Wasn't legislated at that point, strongly encouraged. It wasn't until we had the IRTPA, Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act, that required everyone to do a joint duty assignment before you could ascend to the ranks of senior executive, much like general officers having to do a joint assignment. Goldwater Nichols. So it's important to, Kevin used the source analysis. I'll just use the walk in somebody else's shoes. Don't complain about another agency or another company unless you've worked there and you know what their challenges are. That's the same with government and industry. Those of us who were in government like to say industry just doesn't understand the rules and the regulations and the laws and the policies that we have to live in, and annual budget cycles. And what do you mean you can't, give us a 5-year contract? On the other hand, when I was in government, I didn't understand revenue and profit and cash flow and, fill in the blank. Understand it now. So having that shared understanding goes a long, long way. The last point that I will make is, we talk about diversification. On the flip side, we need those deep experts, whether it's in the intelligence community, an analyst who has spent 20 years studying the nuclear program of North Korea. We absolutely need those experts. It doesn't mean you can't do a couple of years in another organization working the same portfolio, but a different part of it, and just looking at it from a different perspective. The same in industry. We need those deep experts who are studying fill in the blank, whether it's phenomenology, whether it's microelectronics, whether it's hypersonics, so that, again, as a government industry team, we're hopefully staying a step ahead of our adversaries and really tackling those hard targets. it works, it comes together when we all understand one another and how we all fit together, because it takes all of us to make it happen.
Any other comments?
I'd just quickly say that I think the part of the diversity of experience is it allows you to build a more diverse network that you then can exercise when you need to. And so, when I was working in enterprise tech, I spent time at startups, venture-backed startups, and then one of my companies was acquired by IBM. So kind of going from a 50-person company to a 100,000-person company was painful, but I learned a lot from it. And so then, when we went through our journey, at Maxar, I see people in the audience. So, see Al and Abe and Ryan Smith, and so we were able to kind of identify, with that experience. And so whether you were being acquired or the acquiree, it was, even though it was a different industry, there were skills they were able to bring forward. So I just think that's important, early in your career, to be able to get a diverse set of experiences. And you may not, even though I was doing a kind of enterprise search, with MIT-based startup, in one world, and then coming in the geospatial community, there's still a lot of parallels that you can draw upon, and also people that you can ask and get advice on how to apply that in your career.
Thanks so much, Tony. I'm going to actually combine two questions here. So there is a lot of industry here today. So what advice do you have for companies recruiting candidates? And I'm getting really overwhelmed by all the options. So how do you select? What are the things you look at?
I'll start. I think one of the things that is important is just looking at alignment of your personal values with the company's values. And so, companies that are trying to build a great culture are very specific about what they look for in terms of the type of people that they want to be part of their organization. What matters to them. And so at Maxar, we have 6 values. We put mission first. We stay curious. We do it right. We act like owners. We work better together, and you matter. Those are the 6. And so when we engage candidates, if there's good alignment between the things that those candidates care about and what we care about as a company, it's a way for you to do self-selection on where you can be your best selves at work. So that's one of the things that we focus on.
So, old roommate, 30 years plus in NSA. Her son basically comes out as a data scientist, making more money, if you can imagine, than her mom, the NSA person. It's crazy, some of the offers they're getting. And he jumped at, and again, it was like, I got 140 here, 150 here, I get this, I got stock options, up. And it was 1 year ago when he accepted that job. And so I sat down with him and I said, so how you doing? He goes, I hate it. And again, he just saw the money. He kind of looked at his mom like, I'm making more money than you, Mom. Like, and I think it goes back to what Tish said is you gotta do what you're passionate about. I mean, it's okay to make money. I know when I started as a GS5, we were only making $21,500 a year. Think about that, $21,500 a year. And I think the way I was raised with my mom and dad, and Virginia Tech, Prosim, that I may serve. I mean, that was ingrained in me from day one. Was I'm going to serve my nation, and I picked the government and ended up loving it. But I think it goes back to what Tish is saying: is what's in your core, what's in your what are you passionate about? I mean, it's okay to go for the. I mean, we could have gone to work for Texas Instruments or Schlumberger, and they were offering maybe like 30 or 35 a year. But again, I went to my core, and it was that I wanted to serve my nation, and that's what I did. And I didn't make a lot of money, but man, I loved the job. It was a great choice.
Love that answer. I worked a second job at Naval Intelligence just to be able to have my own apartment, because you didn't make a lot in government, but mission first. So Tish, this question's for you. You spoke about knowing when to take on a new role and getting those phone calls from your network, but how do you say no if it's not for you without hurting your network connections?
Wow, great question. I'm not the best person to ask. As my husband tells me, I'm too nice, and I don't know how to say no. So first of all, if it's your network that's coming to you and asking you to do something, they're going to understand if you say no. And it's really, I'll just take it back to, what's your passion? How does it fit in with your plan? And saying no it's just not the end of the world. Now, it's more about how you say no. It's doesn't fit in with my plan right now. Can I help you find someone else? I don't think it's the right timing for me right now. And you don't have to say anything more than that, but it might be, and I did this once, when I retired, it's because I wanted to spend more time with my aging parents. My mother had Alzheimer's, and I was asked to consider another position when I stepped down from NGA. And our mutual mentor really wanted me to take it, and I just said, it's just not the right time because of my parents. I shared more, they were a friend, but you don't have to share more. Share what you're comfortable sharing. But if you can add that, it's not just no, it's thank you for this great opportunity. I've really thought about it. It's not the right timing, doesn't fit in, maybe another time. And can I help you find, I've got an idea on who might be even better than me, or just as good as me, or someone who is, really a good fit. So saying no graciously, I think also is a help.
Thank you. And there's no one better than you, Tish. So, to everyone mentioned, all of you mentioned on relying on mentors in some form or fashion. But how do you find a mentor? What's your advice for finding a mentor?
So they had, when I was brand new in OSD, they had a program called Senior Executive Management Development Program, SEMDEP. And so it was like a checklist, and it said, okay, go find a mentor. And I was like, okay. So I walked in, and I was naive, and I walked into the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisitions, Technology, and Logistics, Pete Aldridge, great guy. And I walked in, I go, hey, sir, how are you? I'd like you to be my mentor. All the mill aides and all the EAs were laughing, chuckling outside the door. And he smiled and he goes, Kevin, I grew up in industry. I really don't understand government, but let me introduce you to this deputy undersecretary. Come to find out, she was a senior contracting officer at NAVAIR. We fit together perfectly. And I didn't know her, but you just sort of, sometimes you just gotta, I don't know if I would recommend you walking into the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics saying, I'd like you to be my mentor. I mean, you can, but again, sometimes you just happen upon it. She was a fantastic mentor, by the way. She made me apply for jobs I never wanted to apply for, just so I understood how to fill out the forms and become an SES. They were hard. It took a long time. And she knew that I wasn't going to get the first one. She knew I wasn't going to get the second one. But as you learn, as you go through those interview process, you get better and better. And then when that one job you really want opens up, you're done. You got your forms filled out. You understand how to do the interview process. So again, I benefited from having multiple mentors. So I would recommend to you, I think I had like 4 or 5 mentors. And sometimes mentors will disagree with each other, and that's good advice too. You can hear from one mentor saying, don't go to DNI. And then the next mentor saying, yes, go to DNI. It's good to have different perspectives again, but have multiple mentors is what I would
And
say.
they don't even need to be senior to you. Sometimes it's good to have mentors who are actually junior to you. So, great advice, Kevin.
And so I would just really agree with Kevin there. Just ask. You don't know what they're going to say. Folks are flattered when they are asked to be a mentor or asked for advice. And if they don't have the bandwidth or they don't think it's a good fit, they're going to do exactly what Pete Aldridge did. They're going to work with you to find a mentor that is a good fit. And I would just add, multiple mentors, absolutely. Multiple perspectives, absolutely. It's that diversity of thought. And having mentors who don't look like you, who don't have your background, are going to challenge you. I have walked out of any number of mentoring conversations thinking, I would never do that. That advice, I don't think so. And then go home and reflect on it and think, there's something there, you know? If all your mentors are just like you, it's like giving yourself advice. You know, you want different advice. So, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, another question, a question I get all the time, but I'm anxious to hear from you all. This is very practical. So you're in this company you love, you're in this or agency you love what you're doing, but you and your supervisor are kind of not clicking. And so you're dealing with a supervisor who is just, it's a difficult situation. What is your advice to people who are already in their dream job, but they're having a hard time with their immediate supervisor? What advice would you provide them?
I'll start. Never shy. So that network, first of all, you know, talk with carefully. You know, others actually who might be in the office, who might be experiencing some of what you're experiencing, you know, to get a second opinion on, you know, is there really an unhealthy relationship? Is it you? You know, you have to ask yourself what is uncomfortable about the relationship. You know, there's I think, self-introspection at any point. You know, really trying to analyze and understand the situation. I've had the best bosses. I've had only one uncomfortable work relationship, and it was actually very early in my career. And my assessment was it was a perfectly lovely person who it wasn't a good fit for them. And a number of us did have this conversation. He was a brilliant physicist, just not really good at relating with people and, you know, supervising people and helping us in our career development and even, you know, running programs. That said, I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do as a supervisor. I learned a lot about how I wouldn't handle some situations. And that was priceless to get, you know, that kind of experience early in my career. At the same time, he was brilliant, and I really did learn a lot. I chose to stick it out. He actually wasn't in the job all that long. I have talked with any number of folks who have been in an uncomfortable situation, and you really do, every situation is different. You have to assess it. And, you know, at the end of the day, what is it doing for and to you as a person? I mean, if you absolutely hate going to work every day and you're taking that home and then your home life is miserable, you need to make a change. And so it's that, again, you know, you're the one that knows, you're the one that has to make that assessment. Talk to your network, talk to your friends, talk to whoever you get advice from. But take charge, because sometimes it's not going to get better, and you've just got to make that decision and make that change on your own.
Yeah, I would just add quickly that it's, I'd pull the thread on, is it stylistic? Is it values? I mean, is there some where's the misalignment? And have that kind of inform, you know, what your path forward would be. You know, typically if you take the time to understand the why, it helps give you a path in terms of where you can go. And if you understand, you know, what the goals of the organization are, and then the role your supervisor, you know, plays in that, you know, then typically you can kind of get beyond the surface issues and get to a place where it's a better fit for you and a better fit for for your manager. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you all. Okay, next question. So we heard Admiral Sharp, we heard Principal Deputy DNI Dixon talk a lot about sort of the future of geospatial intelligence, both in the private sector and in the public sector. So for those who are prepping to come into this workforce, any advice on majors? Should you get a master's degree if you're leaving college? If so, any suggestions on what type of major? Just some advice on education coming in.
Well, I just think it's important to continuously learn. I don't know that it's as necessary to get advanced degrees. I think it's important to continuously develop new skills. And so we're seeing a lot of cases where our team members are getting certifications in whether it's in the geospatial community or data science or computer science. And I think that in many ways it allows them to quickly skill up and then apply it in an operational context. So I think that's in many ways the future of what we're going to see in our industry.
So I've been helping a lot of kids in the neighborhood with their resumes as they're coming out of college. I got to tell you, the folks that say, like right at the top, data scientist, and these are the program, the languages I know how to program in. Oh my God, they have a ton of offers. And I think back in my day, I didn't even know what a data scientist was. Again, having that diversification of saying, hey, I got all these programming skills, and just about everybody wants a data scientist, whether it's NGA, NSA, DIA. You got to be able to take all that data in all those data stores and somehow put it together. That seems to be the hot trait right now.
Okay. I remember at a previous GEOINT, it was Mary Legere that recommended a book by Greg Hartley, I think it was, Fuzzies and Techies, How Fuzzies Will Take Over the Digital Universe. I have read that book. I've bought hundreds of copies of that book because I'm a political science major, so I've given it out. It sort of helps me rationalize my existence in the universe. But Kevin, I think you're spot on, so thank you. With that, I think, by the way, I have just been, Rhonda and USGF, thank you for this opportunity. I think this is such an incredible topic and panel given where we are in COVID. And so thank you for hosting this. Thank you for letting me participate with Tony and Kevin and Tish. I've got goosebumps. So thank you. John, I think I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Yes, well, thank you all, Trish, Tony, Kevin, Ellen, for participating on this panel because it's really important, especially, as you said, during the times of COVID.